And let in the participants. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm seeing that we have some participants that have joined us. I see Betty, Kagure, Leah, Catherine. Karibuni sana. We're just connecting onto the Facebook Live, and then we shall be starting in less than a minute. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Karibuni sana to this discussion for today, where we'll be talking about the adoption adventure. We have Grace that's been having a bit of a technical issue coming on, but we are also expecting her. So welcome. I see that we have about 13 attendees. We'll give another minute to have others join us. All right, so we are a large number now. So good afternoon, and we will just get started. Very happy to be joined by our panelists for today. So first of all, welcome everyone. Welcome our panelists. welcome our participants. And this is the second discussion that we're having on the lifestyle law series, and where we are featuring Musyimi and company advocates. And today's discussion is going to be on the adoption adventure, getting started and journeying through. And with the lifestyle law series, what we're doing is just giving an opportunity for members of the public to be able to get advice really on issues that affect us on a day-by-day basis, but we don't know how, we might not understand how do we, what kind of advice might we need, what kind of help might we need, what are the answers to some of the questions that we've been having, and so that is the reason we're doing this now. The first one we had was last Saturday, where we talked about custody access and co-parenting. It was a very vibrant discussion, very lively, a lot of questions that were raised, and Anne, our legal host for today, and also for last time, was amazing in terms of just really being able to deliver on answering the questions. Like she had like between 30, actually almost 50 questions. So for today, we are looking at the adoption adventure, getting started and journeying through. And we are holding this discussion in the context of this November being the National Adoption Awareness Month. And also just very interestingly, there was I know a lot of us watched the documentary, the Baby Stealers documentary on BBC I. It aired on 16th November, and it raised a lot of furor and a lot of questions and a lot of discussion and a lot of debate. And one thing that we are always about is using the media to really be able to reach a conclusion on some of the things that are affecting us, recognizing that community, coming together as a community is the way in which we are going to solve the problems that we have within us. The fact that children are getting sold, the fact that children are getting trafficked points to actually a lot more than evilness. It points to dysfunction in the system. It points to inequalities in this country. It points to issues of children, which are all going to come out. And so today we are joined by two guests that are going to just really help us understand what is it that this adoption process entails. They have been working in the space for a long time, and we have, yes, wonderful. So, no, sorry, I have promoted the wrong person to the panel list. Let me, I was trying to get Grace Ekambi. She's now as a guest, but I want to get her onto the panel. Wonderful. So she's up there. So yes, so today we are joined by two ladies that have been really working very tirelessly in this space, in the space of child rescue, in the space of trying to make sure that children get placed in healthy and wholesome houses, and really just taking care of them. And I was just reading a lot about them and their profiles and really the kind of work that they've been doing, and it's extremely noble and just really worthy of praise, and yeah, just really we are celebrating them today. So karibuni sana. I will just very quickly jump into, oh, wonderful. Karibu sana, Grace, happy to have you here. So I'll just start with introducing our guests, and then introduce our legal partner who will be able to take us through these terms, what we mean, some of the legal terms in this space, in the adoption process, as well as the process, and then we'll get to hear of some of the experiences really in terms of the challenges, some of the smoother experiences. What are some of the legal obstacles? If you want to adopt a child, what are some of the issues that you might face? And we'll be hearing about it both from the perspective of the children's home, as well as from the adoption center, as well as from the legal perspective. So just to begin with, I will introduce Grace. And Grace Ekambi, who's with us, we're very happy to have her. Grace is a young professional, positive about making positive and sustainable change in the lives of children in Kenya. She's the officer in charge at Little Angels Network. Little Angels Network is a child protection organization and one of 6 registered adoption societies in Kenya. They are licensed to connect children with families through the permanent bond of adoption. So welcome, Grace. We're very happy to have you here with us.
Thank you very much.
And then we also have Dr. Janet Mutinda. And Janet Mutinda is the Executive Director at New Life Home Trust. Previously, she was an executive pastor at Nairobi Chapel. I was telling her that when I was in campus, she was actually my pastor, so it was great to connect with her once more. And she's an experienced national director with a demonstrated history of working in the nonprofit organization management industry. She's skilled in discipleship, pastoral theology, volunteer management, public speaking, as well as strong business development. So karibu sana, Pastor Janet. We are Dr. Janet, Pastor Janet. I'll probably be using those interchangeably. Very happy and honored.
That's fine.
And then we also have Mbugua, who we met last time. And Mbugua is a senior partner and head of the litigation department at Musyimi and Company Advocates. She's a lawyer with more than 25 years experience in legal practice. And the litigation department under her leadership specializes in practice areas in commercial litigation, banking law, environmental and land law, judicial review, family law, medical law, employment law, insurance law, arbitration, and mediation. So very happy to have you once more with us, Mrs. Mbugua. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
So maybe we'll just jump into it. And even as our panelists speak, also want to mention to the participants that we try to have the forums as participatory as possible. So for you who might have questions about the adoption process, about maybe you have been part of it, or maybe you've just begun, or you're thinking of starting and you've faced particular challenges, please do feel free to write in your questions in the Q&A and in the chat, and also just to give your thoughts, we'll just keep on referring to them as we go ahead. So to begin with, we'll just actually start with Anne and just ask her to maybe just define some of the terms and to begin with the terms, and then also the process of the adoption scenario.
Good afternoon, and I'm happy to be back. I'm also delighted to have my two colleagues. They are very key players in the industry, in the adoption field, with a lot of experience and with the heart for children. You know, there are people who enter into some business without the heart for children. They sure have the heart for children. If you ask me to define the terms, there are so many terms. Maybe we just pick the key ones. Adopting parents, the parents who desire, or the parent or parents who desire to have the child. They walk that journey with the assistance of a team of people. The first one is the Adoption Society. These are the ones who interact with the adopting parents. They check their suitability, they do the background checks, and they do the reports. They are also the ones who declare children free for adoption, because no child should go through the process of adoption without being declared free for adoption, because you do not want to take a child through the process of adoption, then midway you find, oh, the child was actually not available for adoption. So there we have the Adoption Society. Then there's the Adoption Committee, which sits with the ministry, and they are the ones that license the adoption societies. They are the ones who are given the overall duty of overseeing the whole adoption. I don't want to call it industry. I'd rather call it ministry in Kenya. So they are very key. They are housed in the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. Without them, there will be no adoption, because they are the ones that license the societies. From there now, we go to the whole issue of what is a declaration. It's another term which one needs to know. What is that document that is called certificate declaring a child free for adoption? Who issues it? Like I had said, it's the adoption societies. What does it say? The child has been investigated. Nobody has come to claim the child. there is no nexus between this child and the family. So now we can place this child in another setup. The lawyers are also players in the ministry, and their work is actually just to represent the child's interest in that process, just to ensure that the reports are there, to ensure that the law is complied with when they go to apply for adoption. They ensure the paperwork is done well. Then now they approach the court in a proper way, and then the work now moves to the courts, whose duty is to ensure that everything has been done well. The child's best interests are taken care of, and now they're the ones that issue the declaration for adoption. That process ends with the court declaring that, hey, this child now is no longer the child of X, but it moves to Y, who is the applicant. Sometimes we go to the level of saying this child will now be called was this. Now this is a new name, especially now to put it in line with the family name. And when the 2010 Constitution came in, we needed also to get a declaration that they are deemed to be citizens of Kenya. That helps very much in acquisition of the passport and any other document. So I've just mentioned the key players in the industry. There is another person who is very critical. We call that person a guardian ad litem. The guardian's work is to also look after the best interests of the child. Is supposed to file a report, should visit the home and give a report saying, I went to the home, I see they are bonding well, they are suitable parents, I can vouch for them, and here is my report. So that person also files a report. Ultimately, you're supposed to appoint a guardian who can, in your absence, in the event of demise, can actually be like the parent to that child. What is the power of that order? The power of the order from court for adoption, it, in essence, extinguishes the rights and duties of the biological parents or the person who has caregiving of that child at a particular time, and confers those rights and obligations on the adopting parents. So it is something which is seriously legal. Call it giving birth legally. You know, as to be the following day, you can't go and say, I have changed my mind. You know, I would surrender this child, simply because now you are the parent with parental responsibility. And that order comes with all the powers and rights, including inheritance. So that child is now entitled to inherit your estate, and can actually take you to court for childcare and etc. That is just touching on the surface. There are so many definitions in the Act, but maybe these are the ones of the key players. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a very wide and you've introduced us to the different players in the sector. I like that you say you don't call it an industry, but instead a ministry, because like with what recently happened, that the whole idea of human life, babies' lives, children's lives being sort of like marketable items is quite problematic. So yeah, I like the fact that you use the word ministry, and just really you've opened our eyes to the process, some of the key players involved, and really what one can expect as they go through with the whole process. So maybe I'd like to just bring in Dr. Janet, and the question I'd be asking would be, what kind of preparations does one need to make as they begin on the journey of adoption? Because I tend to imagine that one would immediately think the first question on their mind would be budget, but then probably there are other things that one might not have been able to tease out, and that in your time, in your experience, you've you've been able to recognize some of those areas that people don't give enough thought to, that they should?
All right, that's an interesting question. I guess it's very much like having a child biologically, but a little different, because if you're planning to get a child biologically, then you have the 9 months and almost a guarantee between 8 and 9 months. If everything goes well, you'll have your baby. You're not thinking about the genetic background of this child. You're not thinking about the many fears that some parents have. So I imagine if you are preparing to adopt, this cannot be an emotional decision. You know, there are people who, during this November month, may be so excited about all that they are seeing. Well, your friend could adopt, and very quickly you want to get in the bandwagon, so to say. You cannot do that. I always think adoption. Think adoption is very much like marriage. Just because everybody is getting married, you don't just run to get married. It's a lifetime commitment, and this, more importantly, not to an adult. This is a child's life that you're, in a sense, signing on. So are you ready emotionally for this, with any challenge that may come? Because again, this child comes in with genetic, a history you may not be aware of. There may be things in their family you may not be aware of. And if you're not ready emotionally, if a child acts up, maybe a toddler, just tantruming normally, and you start thinking something about this child and where they came from. So you really need to make up your mind that this child will come in and we will accept them regardless of what or how things pan out. There's a social aspect of adoption. Adoption is not an individual journey. There are families. You have families, your relative, your friends, your neighbors. Unfortunately, more in the past, there was a lot of stigma associated with adoption. And so a lot of people would begin the adoption process, conveniently move to a new neighborhood, and voila, just when they're placed with a baby, so the neighbors have no idea there's an adoption that has happened. There are some, I've met families who've told me, you know, we live in Mombasa, we never visited upcountry, they call us upcountry people. So they never really came up this way. And so by the time they came in to visit their families 2 years later, there was the intentional desire for them to and make people think this was a biological child. So again, you have to be very, prepare yourself socially. A lot of people want to keep this hidden, like this big family secret. But then there's always that one person who knows you adopted. It may be a friend. Maybe I told Grace, you know, Grace, you're my best friend, please don't tell anybody. But then Grace meets Mbugua and says, you know, don't tell anybody, but I'm so excited, Janet is adopting. And that thing that you thought was a secret becomes something people know. And unfortunately, if you don't prepare the child and disclose to them, again, that's a big issue that maybe we'll discuss later. Just how do you let your children know they were adopted and that it is not something to be ashamed of? So there's the whole social, bringing in your families, your friends, and just making this transparent, of course, with sensitivity around it. There may be the economical issue. A lot of people will ask the question, what will it cost me? But then again, when you are expecting a biological child, anything could happen. You could be bedridden. You may think it will be a very normal delivery. It works out to be a cesarean. So again, with everything, there is a cost, but there's a lot of stereotypes that are associated with this. So a big one, again, just scaling that obstacle or hurdle of the stereotypes, the stigma, and just being a proud parent that I did this. Again, there's a big thing. People assume that only those who are struggling maybe with infertility or are not for different reasons able to have their own biological children are the only ones who should adopt. But a great thing is happening in Kenya where there are many families who have their own biological children and they've made the conscious decision to adopt. So again, we are really rejoicing as the years roll by. There's a lessening of the stigma associated with adoption. So again, there's a whole varied issues that you need to think about when you are bringing in a child.
That's very, very in-depth. Thank you for that. And it would be interesting to now just have Grace just come in and talk about some of your observations, Grace, in terms of what are the preparations, from your observations, the families that appear to have formed a very healthy bond versus the families that have had challenges bonding with the new child. What are the differences? Is it differences of preparation? Is it differences in terms of temperament? Is it differences in terms of budget? Because one fear that one might have is before one goes to adopt a child is maybe this child will reject me. Is that something? Yeah. What happens in that situation? Just from your thought, is it an environmental issue that can then be mitigated, or is it a personal issue that really nothing can be done?
In bonding is mostly done at the institutional level, and also, of course, when the child is taken home and during the first compulsory 3 months fostering period that the law provides. So for the initial bonding in the institution, maybe the issues you can say are those ones, because this will be like the first time you're meeting a child, you're trying to bond with this child. The child might not want to bond with you, so it can be from the child's side and not from your side as a parent. So this is a child-centered operation, so most of the time it's the best interest of the child that is being observed, and we try and address the issues the child is sharing, maybe verbally or non-verbally with his or her actions. So with that, then we see if a social worker can be able to walk with you through this journey. If not, then we just stop that bonding and go back to the drawing board and start again. The challenges that can come at the home level when you've already bonded, left the institution with the child and gone home to your home with the child. Maybe there's concerns there might be that the parents have to go back to work immediately, that the bosses are not allowing them leave. I know there's a bill in Parliament right now that might really favor adoptive parents, and that they may be given the leave that they require so that they can stay with the child for 3 months, like how birth parents stay in with their child and bond as they, heal. We need the same for adoptive parents. That is a major challenge, because most of them are maybe take in their leave, their 21 days, and then after that they have to go back to work. But if they have the 3 months leave as any other parent, birth parent in Kenya, then they'll be able to bond with the children well and be able to, have that relationship more stronger than it will have if they only had maybe a week or 21 days to handle everything in there. So yes, those are the challenges that are there, but we really try and support the families as they go through the bonding. We are there. That's why the social workers in the institution, the children, the CCIs, and the adoption societies are there to work with you, see how we can help you with the journey, write letters if we need to your HR, so that you can be able to be allowed to and get those leave days and things like that.
Wow, that's interesting. And is one allowed the option? So what then happens if the bonding does not work well enough? How many times, is there like a number of limits in which one has tried with a child and tries with another one, and a point which you guys were like, okay, the problem is with this person? Is there a limit, or what happens?
Well, I don't think we always let it go to that level. Usually we present the child to you. Janet can confirm this. You present the child, you look at the child, you're not okay with the match, then we don't proceed to the bonding level. So at this point, then, you don't go on to the bonding level, we just go back to the drawing board. And of course, if you reject more than 1, 2, 3, 4 matching suggestions that we placed on your table, then maybe you need more counseling. So we refer you to counseling again, you know, so that you can understand you better and be able to deal with you in a better way. Okay.
And so this question would be now also for yourself and Dr. Janet.
Yeah.
What about with the people that come, especially in this context where of child trafficking and really our systems which are not, which could be strengthened in terms of child protection. So how do you evaluate a potential parent? What are red flags that you might have seen in the past that you and that you continually know that if a person asks these kinds of questions, there's no way, like they will probably not make good parents, and I do not feel I should trust them? Is it an instinctive thing? Is it something from instinct, or is it a pattern that you've observed that people that may have wrong intentions continually manifest?
All right. I think, Grace, maybe you can expound on the requirements from the good conduct and everything. What if Kigo was coming in tomorrow or Monday to see you, what would be the requirements that help you vet? And then I can pick it up from our side, how now we go with our observations, a lot of discernment, but from the legal formal part.
Okay. When clients come into to our office, you come into us and say you want to adopt. The initial step is just having a sit down with you, taking you through the process, understanding where you're coming from, your motivation, and giving you the profile to go home, and the application papers to go home and look at and fill, and then you bring them back. So the documents that are required are pretty straightforward, mostly social, to get to know who you are. We require an application form, a referee from 2 people, medical forms, your birth certificates, and things like that. And then from there, we look at the documents provided, take you through something called an assessment. We do a home visit, we do a pre-placement interview, and we do counseling. We compile the information that we get through these 3 meetings that we've had with you, and compile a report. This report is called a pre-placement report that is taken to a case committee, which is a group of different professions that sit to vet your profile. And what they look at that point is, the law has certain aspects of who can adopt and who cannot adopt. So who can adopt? A person who is between the age of 25 and 65. You should not have any criminal record. You should have a sound mind. So you should not have any record of mental health, according to the Mental Health Act. You should be at least 21 years older than the child you like to adopt. So there are all these laws that have been set. The Children Act. Yes, that we look at, and the case committee members also look at and make decisions with that. And then with that, also the social aspect is mostly instinctive, like you asked. As a social worker, you're trained to know a lot. So we look at a lot of these things as we do the pre-placement interview and the counseling bit. And with that, we pick up the social aspect, and with that, we recommend to the case committee what we think about your matter. So at the case committee, you're either approved, deferred, or rejected. In case you're deferred or rejected, you can always appeal based on whatever reason the case committee will have stated for you. If you're approved, then we take your profile to an institution where now we match you with a child. In the same case committee, children are also declared free for adoption. But that's what we do with the applicants. Then we take the profile to Janet's side.
Okay.
So when the profile gets to us as New Life or any other children's home, we read through it, because again, for us, for lack of a better analogy, I would say for Grace, the parents are their clients. But remember, we have had these babies, some of them from when they were even a day old. So it's not just a formal thing for us. Sometimes it's very personal. You've watched this child fight for life. It's like your child. And so you're not very quick to just place this child anyhowly. It's not about numbers. It's not about placement. For us, we are an organization that is also based on faith. So we do pray a lot about this from when the child comes in, we start praying for the parents. So Grace sends us some of the profiles, the files of the parents. We go through it. We don't assume that because it's come from an agency, everything is intact. So we'll go through it. If we have questions, there may be things we pick up that we may ask. And then when the parents now are called to come and meet the children, again, we have a pre-interview with them to find out more about them. And then there's a lot of observation. A lot of parents assume that they will now come to the children's home and within an hour walk out with the baby. And a lot of parents are very upset when they hear they're still awaiting time. But again, we need to keep reminding people, this is a human being. Even an adult, I can't just today tell Grace, I'm moving you from your house, Grace, and I'm taking you to another house. You can't do that even for an adult. How much more for a child who doesn't understand what is going on? So in our home specifically, we would ask the parents to commit to 5 full days where they come and preferably a whole day. So you come in, once you've matched, assume you came in on a Friday, and you got to meet the child and you felt, yes, this is the child and everything is fine. You would sit with our social worker who will take you through the child's legal file, because we don't want there to be surprises. Then also a nurse will be in that meeting who will take you through the child's medical file, because we want you to understand everything about this child. There may be people who will say, oh no, I didn't know that, and I don't think I want this child. So even before they meet the child, they may already disqualify that much. But then if everything is fine and they get to meet the baby on let's say if it was a Friday, then we say, let's start the bonding on Monday. So give you some time to take your leave days. If you are busy with work and you can't come, we'll say, you know what, just go sort out your leave days and just, this is priority at this point. So when they come in, because we want you to familiarize yourself with it, not just the home, we want you to understand the baby's personality, what they like to eat, what their issues are, so that by the time you come home, the transition is much more smoother. So again, as you're bonding in those 5 days, we are actually observing you. You may find a scenario where there's a couple. They've done all the paperwork and they've come in. Then you notice the mother, for example, is not very connected or is not really bonding or seems to be aloof. So again, our instincts go, we have to follow our instincts, and we may call the couple in and ask, you know, what's going on? Baba keeps coming every day, but mom comes maybe and goes off, doesn't seem to connect. And 1 or 2 times we found out maybe it was the father or the man who really wanted the adoption and the woman was not ready. And again, we will talk about that, counsel them. And sometimes we may actually send them back to the agency and say, you know, you need to work with your clients a little bit more. So we observe, watch if the babies are bonding, if the couples are bonding. Are they asking questions? Are they interested? Are they aloof? Sometimes you have a situation. I remember one little girl who she was a little older. It's much harder for older children because the children's home becomes their home. The little other kids are their siblings, and all of a sudden there's this person who's really honing in on them, and you know, so it gets harder. It's easier when the kids are much younger, but we would observe it, and this little girl would cry. She would not want to be with the parents, and she'd really cry. And after a while, we said, you know, we're not going to force this much. And I think this child did this with about 3 couples. And we started praying that this is crazy. What's going on? Should really act up. But then one couple walks in one day on her birthday, and when this lady had prayed that, you know, I want a child who's very hyperactive. You know, I want a child who just is excited, noisy. And 2 other families had disqualified this child because of her noise. Wow. And somehow they saw this child, and for some reason that day, the child just raised her hands, embraced the dad, and never let go. And it just, I mean, 3 years later, you cannot tell that child was from New Life. So again, we observe a lot of things, and once a child goes home, let's say after a week, it doesn't end there for us. We require the parents to come in monthly. Now, this has been affected a lot in the COVID season, but we're still trying to make it work. So it's like a clinic, because legally, that child, we still are the legal guardians. Until the adoption goes through, the children's home remains the legal guardian. So once the child goes home, we found out in the past, especially for Kenyans, they would be placed with the child 3, 6, 7 months, 1 year. They've not started the legal process in court. And so one of the things we felt, you know, we'll just make you come every month, intentionally, every month, until you get, I mean, it becomes tiring and you think, you know, let me just start this legal process and finish. So that was very sneaky of us, but it works.
Yes.
It's very important. So when they come in monthly, then they'll meet the social worker. Again, get to know how they're bonding, is everything going on, are there signs from the parents, maybe things they may be concerned about. And then we also have the medical team. In all our homes, we have nurses, and we have the medical team, again, meet with the child, the parents. And then unfortunately, we did have a case once where a child came in and needed to have a diaper change. And when the diaper change was being done, we noticed there were little wounds on the child's thighs. And when we asked the parents, she said, you know, no, that is nappy rash.
Oh my God.
But when we observed closely, we realized these are pinch marks. And so when we pushed that, said, oh, maybe it's a helper I had, but we really pushed it because, again, this is a very serious issue. So we had to escalate the thing to our medical doctors, to the children's department, to the agency, and eventually realized that we needed to grow the child. So from that particular case, every month the child comes in, the medical team strips the baby and observes from head to toe. In fact, before you go home with the baby, in a very closed room like you do in a hospital, the baby is stripped, and the New Life team, the medical team and the parents, again, go head to toe and check, is there any mark? Yes, there's a mark here, what happened? You know, so that by the time you bring in the child, yes, we know they will fall, they'll do this, but it has become a very intentional process for us. So there's a lot that still goes on, may seem like it's tedious, but remember, this is a child, a human being, and a life, and we must protect it. If you look at guys who have a new car, you know, they are so protective of the car, they don't want a scratch. How much more a human life? So for us, we are very, very, then legally we can walk away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And I really like the emphasis about protection of the child, and just really that very eagle-eyed focus to make sure that the child's welfare is paramount amidst it all. So the question, another question that would come up would be the question of finance, because I know for a lot of people who watched the BBC documentary, it left one with the idea that that children are for sale or that kind of thing, which is of course a very problematic thing. But then yet for someone, even for someone who legitimately wants to adopt a child, and what are the fees? Are the fees on a legal perspective? Are the fees on the social work perspective? Are the fees at the children's home perspective? And maybe Grace and Anne could just answer, could just really respond to that. And then, so thank you. We're also going to come to the question that the participants have been raising.
Okay, yes, the two costs related to adoption, the adoption process. There's the adoption, the fee that is paid to the Adoption Society. This fee that is paid to the Adoption Society is regulated by the government. It's 12,500 shillings. And then there's the fee, the legal fee now that varies depending with the law firm our clients will decide to choose and go with. So maybe Anne Mbugua can clarify on the cost there.
I think it's good to state that there are even pro bono services for adoption. At least I know there's a time we had a policy of taking like 5 pro bono adoptions in a year. So anybody who would want to do an adoption, really want to do an adoption, would can have options of seeking the pro bono services on negotiating for reasonable fees with the law firm. And I know even the adoption societies keep watch about the lawyers that they refer the adopting parents to, that they do not go to the extreme. If you look at the legal fees of a lawyer, I think adoption cases are on the lower side. Lawyers have other briefs, they charge far much more. I cannot talk about the standard fee because it's law firm to law firm. Yeah. What I know is that many people who are in the adoption field, even the lawyers, they also have the heart for the child. If you could plead for a good fee, you'll get it.
Is there a range, like maybe highest, lowest?
It's very hard to state this because the law firms are varying. You know, there are big law firms, small law firms, experienced lawyers, not experienced lawyers. It's very hard to standardize legal fees. But I wish to state that if you want to adopt a child, it comes with a cost. It's very hard to avoid the cost. In fact, I think we need to check even your ability, and I know this is one of the things they check, ability for you to maintain the child. And ability has nothing to do with high class, middle class, lower class. It's just that you're getting another mouth to feed, bills to pay. We need to be sure you have the money. But I am not aware of any family that wanted to adopt the child and they failed at the basis of costs. We have also done adoptions for as low as 20,000 shillings, which end up being filing fee and small fees paid here and there, commissioning of affidavits. I don't know from where I stand, I do not think legal fees are prohibitive or the cost that the adoption societies charge. Actually, they are very, very reasonable. But anybody wanting to adopt a child, cost is, even set up a home, even get married, you start by getting married, then you now set up a home. And it is so in the animal kingdom. They also, shona the net, get it ready. Now you bring the bride. Everything has a cost. It's nothing to do with cost for a child, but I would be wary of people who are very concerned about even small costs as far as adoption is concerned, because big costs are coming with the raising of that child. That's my thinking. But pro bono services are available.
They do exist. All right, thank you. And what about in the case where a fear that a potential parent might have would be that one day this child's parents, like the actual original parents, would come and try to claim the child back. How does that fit into the scenario? And maybe from a legal perspective, and then also maybe Janet could also just talk about it in terms of how you work that out. Like, I don't know if Pastor Janet, if the parents that have brought their children to you and then later they say no, we want the child back, maybe when the child has been adopted. So maybe you could respond to that, and then Anne could then give us the legal, more on the legal side.
All right, so right there, just a one correction. Parents do not bring children to us, okay, and really should not, apart from in one scenario where we would call it a mother offer. It is legal in Kenya to give up your child for adoption, but then there's a legal process to it. There are many people who may call a children's home and say, I want to give up my child for adoption. Immediately, we will refer them to an adoption agency.
So
because yes, so they are the ones mandated, again, to deal with the parents. I'm very sure Grace will let you know that they're not quick to say, yes, let's sign in. Because the best person for this child is the mother. So you want to know, there's a lot of counseling, again, that kicks in. You have to find out, why do you want to give up this child? It could be an economic reason. It could be, the father of the child has bailed out on her, and how do you help her? Because sometimes it's more, they're very stressed emotionally at that point, and all she's thinking about is, let me let go of this child, not thinking ahead. So really, a lot of the children that I know, the babies who've been offered, many times, because of the counseling, the agency working with them, they will come back. Wow. But if a child, now assume a mother gives up the baby, legally, she's given up to 6 weeks to think through that decision. So if the mother goes to Grace and they've done all the counseling and she's still bent on giving up the child, then the agency will get in touch with a home and say, we have this child. It is the agency that will take the child to the home, because then the home and the mother really are not supposed to be linked at any point. She signs an initial document with Grace releasing the baby, or I'm talking about Grace as the adoption agency here, could be any agency. And then once the baby comes to us, our job is to make sure the baby is given care and protection. And if the mother comes back within that period and wants her baby back, then the agency goes ahead and does the reconciliation, the paperwork, everything. But if the mother stays for a while, we as a home have to take this baby to court. Every child in a children's home, the legal process is we have an OB number from the police, then the child goes through a court process where they're committed to us legally. If the mother would, at that point, the child would have gone through that legal process, Grace can't just come and say, I want child so-and-so, the mother has come. Now would need to take it through the children's department, go back to court, and she can get the baby. So there's a very big difference between a mother-offered child and then a child who was abandoned. Assume a child was abandoned, and then we kept the child legally 7 months, 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, and then the parent shows up. Again, we'll have to go through the process with the children's department. We have to go to court. But then, Grace, maybe you can chime in and Anne. So what happens when a parent has started the adoption process, and then in the middle of all that, the parents appear? Is a potential adoptive parent protected by law?
All right. It's good you've explained how people can surrender children for adoption if they think they are not able to take care of it. This does happen. And we really advocate for this, especially where you don't feel you're up to the task. But also as an option to abortion, because the child's life matters. It would be nice, even if it is for the moment you don't feel you are able to take care of the child, deal with the process so that the child stays in a safe space. It is better than dumping the child on the roadside, which is very common practice in dust bins and whatever. We have to value. yes, we've got to value life, and I'm happy that Janet has explained that it is legal to surrender, to say, I am not able. Can I give it out? It is better than putting it in a dustbin. And I need to say there are even people, this now goes a little further to crisis pregnancy, because I think that is one of the places where we source many of the children who are abandoned. There is no need of being in a crisis situation, because there are people who assist you during pregnancy to deal with the stress that comes with it. And I have in mind people like Protecting Life Movement Trusts, where they get the child, they actually take care of that child. They put it in a place of care called Kiota. And their children are well taken care. I mean, the prospective parents are taken care of emotionally, you know, in terms of vocational training, in terms of spiritual self, it's wholesome. And they also get prenatal care and natal care. So nobody should just say, let me give birth and dump. No, you can get help somewhere. Very important. And then it's good that we need to be very emphatic on, you are not allowed to choose a child. You know, long time I used to think you go to, when I was young, now I'm old, like David said, you go to a children's home and say, I want that one. I once visited New Life Home with my daughter, and she saw a boy called Samuel. Can't remember, I think it was Samuel. And she said, let's go and get Samuel and come and take care of Samuel in our home. You know, it's a feeling of some people when they go, especially to their homes. That is not allowed, because you're not allowed to go choosing, you know, the one with sharp nose, whatever. No, that's not allowed. It's very regulated. But let me come to the big question of, if a mother changes her mind and says, I want my child back. So long as adoption has not been done, we can listen to her. We should listen to her. And I know the courts listen to them. But you cannot just come with DNA and say, she's mine, I want her back because I gave birth to her. No, 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 no. We go back to Article 53 of the Constitution. The best interest of the child is supreme. So we got to ask you some questions. First of all, we have to ascertain, are you mother? You know, because anyone can come and claim a child. Then how did you lose custody of the child? Please tell us. Because if you don't have good explanations at this time, at this point, we start doubting your ability to be a good mother. How did you lose the child? Was the child stolen, or did you dump it somewhere? And then motive, why have you come, and why have you come now? You know, we want to understand. If you pass the tests, and of course, why the change of heart, assuming you had abandoned? Why the change of heart? Or are you like the dog in the manger, you know, I'll not eat grass, but I'll not allow someone else. So I will not, since I've had my child is about to be adopted by another home, I come. No, that's not allowed. It's not competition of our child. I have handled a case where actually the court ordered that the adoption process continues. Not one, I think two times. So yes, we will listen to you, because the best person to take care of the child is a biological mother. That is nature. That's the way nature ought, you know, how things ought to go by nature. However, if you are not able, if you had lost custody of this child through ways that show carelessness and recklessness, it will be responsible of everybody to give you back the child simply because of the DNA. That's the way I would answer it. I don't know why I came when you look so scared. Your face, you look, you look very like I've said something scary.
No, this is all new to me, and I guess a lot of the participants as well. So yeah, it's a lot of food for thought, and yeah, so I mean, you're providing a lot of to reflect on. Thank you so much. So this,
maybe can I say something, Kigwa?
Sure.
Maybe an important thing for people to understand is, and the question is, where do these children come from who are in children's homes? In fact, it was very we had some staggering statistics that were given by government last year, and I mean, very worrying. And they said currently, at least of last year, 2019, we had about 854 registered charitable children institutions, which lay people will say the children's homes. We call them the CCIs, all right? And there are many more that are not registered.
Mm-hmm.
And those that are registered, they have about 45,000 children.
Wow.
Okay. Huge, staggering number.
Yes.
And where do these children come from? So most of them are abandoned. Unfortunately, there's a group of children that have relatives who erroneously believe the child is better cared for in an institution. So it's almost like a boarding school for some institutions, where if you shut down that institution and said, let these children, they'll go somewhere, okay? So that is not really, should not be the work of a CCI. And we really need to work on that to ensure that only children who have no traceable parents are in CCIs. But then let me give you the scenario that, let's say like in New Life, we have, where do the children come from? If you today, after this webinar, you were going somewhere and found an abandoned child, you'd either go straight to the police station, right? You'd either go to a hospital, or you may go to the nearest a government office, okay? So those are the people who would call us. We get called in by police, we get called in. Some mothers will leave the children, give birth in a hospital and abandon the child there. So you can't walk to a children's home and say, I found this baby. Legally, you shouldn't, okay? If you came to New Life today with a baby, very quickly would establish if the child is medically sound, okay? If the child is okay, you as a good Samaritan, we would have you accompany us to the nearest police station, because we need to register this case. This is an abandoned child, and anything could have happened. Maybe somebody snatched the baby and there's a frantic mother somewhere looking for her child, all right? So once the child gets the OB number, then we get to keep the baby, okay? We are required by law to keep that baby there for at least 6 to 7 months. I think the law says 6 months, but we extend that period. During that time, our social workers work very hard to do tracing. We work to see if we can find maybe the mother, maybe the child was abandoned in a public place and you may find something. And we've had some very interesting cases. I remember one time we had a baby who, a newborn, was abandoned in and out of Nairobi town. Immediately our team got there, the baby was very unwell. So our social worker and nurse quickly rushed the baby to the nearest hospital. And when they unwrapped the baby, they looked at the cord and how it had been tied. And apparently this particular hospital has a certain way they do the cord. So immediately they said, this is ours. And of course it was a newborn, quickly looked at the records, how many mothers had given birth the 2 days, and went to the chief police, went house by house looking, and sure enough, one of those mummies didn't have her baby. So it is very important for an institution to do the tracing, because again, the most important person for this child is their biological kin. Maybe the mother doesn't want the child, but there's a grandmother who will love this child. Maybe there's an uncle, there's an auntie. So again, would look for those next of kin. Before the adoption process, you cannot declare the child immediately. They have to have gone through that period. And we need to show the adoption agency that we've done our work. We've traced, we have the police letters, we have everything. They cannot declare until they themselves can actually say, yes, we are satisfied that the process has been done. If in that period we've found a grandmother or a next of kin, we would engage them through the children's office to find out, can you take care of this child, all right? So there's a whole tracing that happens, and you may find a family that says, no, we don't want that child. This is, yes, that is our daughter's child, but she's brought us 7 others and we are tired. We don't want that child. Again, we work with the children's department. We never work in isolation. We work with the children's department, we work with the police, we work with the court. And such a child, where you've been able to establish a relative, that child cannot be declared free for adoption. Unless later they come together and sign that they have relinquished every right. So there's a lot that goes on before the child is declared, and parents have been given a lot of space to come back. But there are many children who maybe were left in a garbage heap. We may never trace their parents. Unfortunately, even today in 2020, people abandon children harshly with an intention to kill. And it's so wrong. One of the things I celebrate about the banning of paper bags, a lot of people used to throw children in those bags. Because once you throw in a child in a bag and throw it in the garbage, who will ever find it? But miraculously, we've seen some kids who came to us in bags and they survived. So again, there's a lot that happens before the child has been declared free for adoption.
If I could ask, and thanks for that, what's the average amount of children that are brought to, or that are called, that New Life is called for on a monthly basis? Is there an average number? And I know you have an office in Nairobi and Kisumu.
Yeah, we have 4 homes. We have a home in Nairobi, Kisumu, Nyeri, and Nakuru. I can't say we really have an average, although interestingly, we've noticed a trend. Between the December, January, I think when kids are out of school, things happen. So usually 9 months, the September, August, September, we always have a little spike. So it's been very interesting, yes. And right now we are watching a very worrying trend with the COVID situation. I think you've seen a lot of what's been going on with young people, just drinking, just the illicit sex. And unfortunately, we do, when you look at that scenario, you expect that in another couple of months, we may have a lot of abandoned children because of what is happening in the nation. So again, we have to keep ourselves ahead of that curve. So I can't say we have an average. It depends. It may be a month we don't get called to, because we're not the only home. There are other homes around. There may be a month when we're not called to rescue. There may be a day you're called to rescue 3 children. So it's nothing that we really can anticipate.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So now some of the questions coming in. Someone asks, are Kenyans, and this question is for Anne, are Kenyans abroad eligible to adopt in Kenya? Actually, I'll just read all these questions, and then where there's a legal aspect, and we'll be able to respond. And Dr. Janet and Grace can also respond to the ones that apply to them. And then another question is, can single women adopt in Kenya? If not, how long does a couple have to be married before starting the adoption process in Kenya? Then there's another question. Lydia asks, thank you for the wonderful, she says, thank you for the wonderful discussion and all the great work that you do. Indeed, amazing work. And then her question is it possible to ask to adopt a child that a person feels connected to after several visits to a children's home? And I know this had come up slightly, but you could also just speak to that about what is possible in case sort of like one does get a connection. And then there's a question. Hello, thanks for the information. Which adoption agency does Grace work with as a starting point to the process? So Grace is with Little Angels Network, but she can say more about that. And then someone say, may you talk the legalities governing surrogacy? That's a very interesting question. Thank you for that. So that's for Anne. And then what's the success rate of tracing for most institutions? That's another very interesting question. So what's the success rate of tracing for most institutions? And then Kathleen asks, how long does each stage of the adoption process take? For example, from application to finalization of the legal process. So how long does each stage of the adoption process take? So that's a very good question. And then I'll just read some of the comments in the chat. And I see our colleague Esther says, I am a happy parent of 2 girls. My firstborn, now an adolescent 10 years later. New life and little angels made the experience of being a parent wonderful. I always remember being told to speak with my daughter about her birth. So I have talked about her being a wonderful gift from another mother and my birth child being the second one. Oh, that's amazing. And what a small world. Because we actually had Easter as a panelist a few months back. So I love that coincidence. And Samuel says, thanks to all, I'm glad to be here. And then Father Easter says, the stigma associated with barrenness is an issue, which makes many women not get support to adopt if the parent can get a child. That's a very interesting point. Mariam says, thank you for the invite. It is Mariam from Toronto. It is a good topic. I work to the court in Toronto to help parents regarding custody. That's a very, thank you for that, Mariam, and do feel free to share more about your experiences and what you've seen around the topic from that side of the world. And then Paul Kipchumba says, this is a new thing to me. I believe adoption is going to be the trend in the future. Like me, very many people are really ignorant of this. That's true. And then Alexander says, thank you to all of you doing a good work. Be blessed. Asante Alexander. Rachel says, do I have to travel to Nairobi for the adoption agency? Or do you have branches all over, Migori specifically? So that question could be for Grace, and maybe also Anne could advise, because I think it had been mentioned that there were 6 adoption agencies I don't know if that's nationwide, so Grace, you can just expound on that. And then Lynette says, thank you panelists for the good work and sacrifice. I was wondering, is adoption only limited to minors? Can children of majority age be adopted? And that question can be answered from the legal perspective by Anne, and then also Janet and Grace can share your thoughts. So thank you for those, so we can deal with those, and then we'll come back to the next round of questions. Thank you all for your asking those very key questions. And also for recognizing the important work that Grace and Dr. Janet have been doing, because I think it's very under the radar. It doesn't get to the headlines, and so it's very easy to forget about it, but yet every day, I mean, it's something that needs to be done. So we could actually start with Anne.
Let me make a comment about the stigma of adoption. And maybe the idea is to go to the philosophy. Where does it come from? When now looking back at my village, I think that stigma was there and big time. I used to hear of children who were bought in Kikuyu, Kugura. I think that is our first problem. We need to deal with that aspect, that someone has bought a child. There's nothing like buying a child because you cannot buy life. Number 2, you only adopt because you cannot give birth. That again is a lie. There are many people, and I'm sure Grace and Janet will tell you, who are queuing to adopt children, yet they are able to get their own. In fact, there are parents who want to adopt the child because they want to spread their wing and embrace another child. I want to say there are even people who go out of their way and they say they want a special needs child. I once dealt with such parent. So it is also a way of giving back to society. It's a way of spreading love. It's a way of changing life for that one extra person. So anybody who adopts is magnanimous in my view, generous at heart, to be blessed by the Lord. But I want to speak to the others, especially the Christians. We are all adopted into the family of God. I think for me, when I started doing adoption, I came with now the preconceived ideas from the village, where people bought children and because they don't have children. And then there was a saying, oh, because they are not related by blood, those kids are naughty. That's all not true. So when I started it, what really opened my mind is the Bible. That we were once alien and strangers, then we got adopted into the family of God, making us heirs with Christ. So all of us are adopted. The moment you accept you are adopted, then you are able to adopt another person. And you open your heart. The stigma also comes with, or the fear comes also with inheritance. Inheritance is a big issue. And I think Grace and Janet will tell us, I don't know, the last time I checked, the girl child is more adopted than the boy child. I don't know, you're going to give us the statistics. Simply because I think people think property and lineage and, you know, the family, and you are adulterating with bringing in some other blood from, but let's be honest, how many of us have given birth to children and they are naughty, and they are even a threat to us, and they are uncontrollable? And how many friends do you have? You were never raised with them, but you're such good friends. In fact, some friends come even before family. They're even the ones who help you fight the family battles, because I've seen friends bringing in people to fight their siblings. It is the same thing. You can meet another human being and you become friends. So that is what I think about adoption. We are all adopted. There is no need to have stigma. In fact, anybody who adopts should be, it's thumbs up. Let me answer now the questions. Kenyans abroad, can they inherit? I'm very eager to hear the comments from my colleagues here, because they are the ones right on the ground, and that's where most people start. What I know is that we have a moratorium on international adoptions. I know a lot of litigation has been done on that, but we have not had adoptions for maybe 5 years or so, international adoptions going through the courts. In terms of the legal provisions are there for international adoptions, black and white in our acts. In terms of our commitments at the level of international conventions, we committed. So we committed to international adoptions, but our government found it in its own wisdom to put a moratorium. However, if you're a Kenyan who's staying abroad,
where
you
a
still are a
moratorium
Kenyan.
sort of like just where a moratorium means a stop.
A stop.
Okay.
And yes, kufunga. And it was mainly informed by the fear of child trafficking. Though arguably, it's unlikely that someone who wants to traffic a child will do so through the High Court. With all this process that Janet and Grace have explained to us, and all the tracking, they bring all the way to their bank details and their IDs and passport numbers, and it's very unlikely that someone who really wants to traffic a child will use the courts. But that is where we are. But if you're a Kenyan abroad, you still are entitled to rights, then yes. The tricky bit is the part of coming stay, because you have heard from Grace and Janet, they want you to bond with the child. They want to know that, so you cannot adopt when you are outside jurisdiction. You've got 3 months with the child in Kenya, but I leave more details to my colleague. I think that yes, especially female, male, very exceptional circumstances. Female, preferably female girl, a child, but it is there, and there are singles who are actually adopting. If you are male, this is one area where discrimination, still based on the best interest of the child. Nature has made us or women trust. That doesn't mean men are not, and we dealt with it last time. So maybe this is just one area where nature appears to favor women more than men. That doesn't mean you cannot take care of a child if you're a man. You can. I do not want to be misconstrued, but it makes it very stringent for the men. It's a little easier for the women. Is it possible to adopt a child one is connected to? You just say, this is the one, give it to me. The law does not, it's as replacement or identification of children. But again, I leave it to the wisdom of Grace and Janet, because they're the ones who deal with the people at that level. Surrogacy and in Kenya, the last decision, to the best of my knowledge from the courts, was to again adopt the child. We do not have a start on surrogacy in Kenya. I know it has tried to come through together with reproductive health bill, and it has had problems. There are many aspects of surrogacy one has to look at, the pros and the cons. And I think the Kenyans need to have that discussion, the pros and the cons, before one finally says, this is a kind of act we ought to do. I once participated in a march against surrogacy in France, in Paris. And I realized there were many issues, and those ones were based mainly on the hire, womb for hire, oppression of the poor child, the poor woman. People jetting out, hiring, surrogacy, hiring someone from the Asian countries, poor girls, to kind of detain them. You put them in they are carrying your child, they are not allowed to do this, they are not allowed to eat that. It started looking like it's fighting the women's rights. There are issues there. Is it far to, but you don't even breastfeed that child, you immediately give it to the other mother. How about that bond? Are you likely to come back? We don't have it. So it is important to dig into this, look at the social side of it, look at also the spiritual side of it. I know there's an angle there. And generally the best interest of the child. But surrogacy in Kenya now, we do not have any act, so you cannot enter into an agreement, to the best of my knowledge.
So just to ask on that, so if someone entered an informal agreement, it can get quite messy. Like if have you encountered a case where there's a because have you encountered something?
Let's look at the practical side of it. I've been engaged to give birth. First and foremost, if you look at all the drafts that have come up, they say you should not be paid anything. So I carry pregnancy for 9 months. I know any mother here, I don't know. I have been mother. It's not easy. So what would motivate me to carry another person's child? So inevitably, there's an economic interest that kicks in. Then now I give birth. You see? So the first thing you get is notification of birth. Mother reads me. How is that to change? And now I put Janet, you see? Janet and another man, and her, Janet and the husband. As parents, you see? Now the father, which father do you put there? You know? There are legal issues. Yes. So it ends up with an adoption. It's either I give birth, I take care of the child, but I say, okay, I'm surrendering this child. It has to go through the channel of adoption. Then Janet now adopts the child. Whereas if we had a law that governs it, there are contracts. So there was a big issue of contracts. Then now we'll be agreeing. You'll give birth. As soon as you give birth, you surrender this child. Thou shalt never see the child again. Thou shalt not trace it now. etc. Yes, so that you can see now the challenges, how they come in.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the other issues were for the other, for Janet and Grace. I don't know whether I've left any legal question.
How long does each stage of the adoption process take, from application to finalization of the legal process? Or maybe you could speak about the timing in terms of the legal process.
Let me talk about the court process. Okay, first and foremost, you should have bonded with that child at least for 3 months before you hit court. then as to mean you file the application. So then you file the application. Stage 1 is to get the appointment of the guardian, so that the guardian can do the report. At the same time, an order to the Director of Children's Services to do their report. That stage may be 2 months. Then now the report, their report can take short time or long time. I guess now with COVID, it should be harder to get one quickly. So some time now is lost there. Then once you get your report, you come back to court. By the time you lodge your the report, etc., you could get a hearing date within 2 months. And then you do your hearing. Most judgments we take will happen within 1 month or so. I have to say that our court has been very accommodating and very supportive of the adoptions process. And I believe they give priority to these kind of matters. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So then there were questions to Janet and Grace. So maybe Janet, you could go.
All right. Grace, why don't you take us through the process of adoption, and then we'll be able to chime in the rest of the answers there.
Sawa. The initial stage of adoption, the client, you as a client, comes to our office so that we can take you through the process. Like I said earlier, we take you through the process, we give you forms which you go and fill, and then you bring them back to us. When you bring them back to us, we take you through the assessment stage where we interview you, take you through pre-adoption counseling, and visit your home. The home visit is basically to assess where you're living and see if this is a good place for a child to live in. Yeah, and then we compile a report based on the findings that you'll have found. This report is taken to the case committee, which, like I said, is a group of different professions. They sit and verify your documents and make a decision. Usually, if it's in your favor, you get an approval. After you have been approved, in the same case committee, children are declared free for adoption, because not every child who is in an institution is free to be adopted. So the ones who can be adopted are tabled in the case committee after the tracing has been done. Like Janet took us through the whole aspect of how we try and reunite children with their families. Apart from the home, when the home forwards those documents to us as an adoption society, we also do the same. We try and call the Good Samaritan who's there, talk to the stakeholders. So is it the Department of Children's Services or the police? We go there, we go through the OB and look at the abstract itself, as in we try and trace as well. Because like Janet again said, the best place for a child to grow is within the family, the biological family. Adoption is an alternative option, so we do not rush towards it. It should be option B. So plan A is to get the family and place that child in the biological family. But if all those efforts are not futile, then we table the matter in the case committee and the child is declared free for adoption. After the child has been declared free for adoption and you have been approved, we take your matter to the matching department. Now in the matching department, this is where the findings we found in during the interview, and also what you've written in your application, because in your application we ask you what kind of child you prefer. So you write maybe a girl between the age of 3 to 5, or a boy between this and this, or a set of twins. You know, you specify what you want. So we take you to the matching department, and the matching department looks at what you have written in your application and the findings that you had found while doing the interviews and the interactions we had with you. And then we use that information to match you with the child. The child that is matched is the child who has been declared free for adoption. Then we communicate that match to you. If you're happy with the match, okay, so after the match has been communicated, you go to an institution where your child is and you see the child. If you're happy with the match, you start bonding with the child. Janet explained the bonding that happens. So you bond with the child maybe for 5 days if it's at New Life Home Trust, or, you know, depending with the institution and their rules, you work with that. After you're done with the bonding, you take the baby home. Taking the baby home is what you call placement. You're placed with the child and you stay with the child for 3 months. These 3 months, we call them the fostering periods, and it's required by the law. It's compulsory. You need to start with that before you begin the legal process. So you bond with the child for 3 months. Every month you come to our office at Little Angels Network for follow-up, so that we can just see the child, see how you guys are bonding, how you're interacting with each other. Again, look at the interaction. You can tell us, and you can also see what's happening. And with that, we advise and assess accordingly. After that has been done, you communicate that you're ready to begin the legal process. We request us to forward you identify a lawyer, or you decide to represent yourself in court. If you identify a lawyer, the lawyer will write to us requesting for your documents, and if you decide to represent yourself, again, you request for your documents, and then the legal process will go as Anne has advised. The time that takes, a textbook perfect scenario will be 9 months, but all adoption stories are different. Yeah, okay. All adoption stories are different.
Okay. So a year is about
how all pregnancies are different. Sorry?
So a year is like a bit
average. So,
okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but that would be like a perfect scenario. All adoption stories are different. Just trust the process, go with it. It will end at some point.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If you could just respond to some of the questions, some of the other questions, like tracing. Although I think tracing is for that's the children's home that does it. So the other, if you could just respond to some of the questions that have been put towards you. All right. So I see this one. Mm-hmm.
Towards me?
Yeah, or maybe, yeah. Is there any other question that we've left off that had been put towards you?
Okay, yeah. Someone asked if a single parent. And answered that. Adoption agencies, we have 6 registered adoption societies in Kenya. We have Little Angels Network. We have Bakna Kenya. We have Change Trust. We have Kenyan to Kenyan Peace Initiative, KKPI. We have Kenya Children's Home Adoption Society, that's KCH. And we have Ripples International. Little Angels Network has a branch in Kisumu and Mombasa. We operate in those 2 regions, and Nairobi, which is the head office. Yes, but most of them are in Nairobi. Ripples International is in Meru. Yes, that answers the regions question. What other question was for me? Yeah.
I think that's it.
Janet can go as a look at other questions.
Yes, please.
All right, I think there's a question about the success rate of tracing for most institutions. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we have any data for that, but again, because remember, through this whole process, we are legally liable. So we and the adoption agencies, this is a whole legal process from beginning to end. And so we want to ensure that we can be able at any point to stand in court and say we have done it, family members who may be involved in it. So again, it depends case by case where the child came from. So, but we really work very hard to ensure that we can get the parents or the families of the children. But it's very disheartening sometimes when you do find the families and you can tell they're able to, but they say, no, we don't want that child. And so you have, again, to keep working with them. So you may go to other homes and find their older children who are there. And once we've established there is a family member, we cannot submit those documents to the agency for declaration. So what we would do is find, at New Life, our commitment is to place children. We say we do 3 things. We rescue abandoned and vulnerable babies. Second thing we do is care for them. We are unapologetic about the high standards of care we give our children. Ironically, we are many times, it is not taken well by some who will say, you know, look, New Life is a very rich organization. Look how their kids are dressed in Gap. But I mean, if you donate Gap clothes for the babies, your intention was for them to wear them. Number two, none of these babies signed up to be abandoned. So if there's anyone who should get double love and care, really should be these babies. And so if you come to any of our homes, we really do work hard to ensure anybody can come in, you can hug that child without feeling, you know, oh, there's something icky. Yeah. Unfortunately, there are many homes that intentionally want to have a veneer of poverty and will intentionally keep things looking basic, the place a little smelly, because then it can tug on the strings of well-wishers. But we really feel this is a God job. And I always tell a lot of people in my sector, nobody needs to cast you. You'll cast yourself by what you do with the funds and the things that come in. I mean, these are orphans, these are kids, and people's intention was, so we really need to be people of integrity as we do this. So the third thing we do, we rescue, we care, is to place children in families. However nice an institution is, it is not the place for children to grow. I mean, think of a hotel like Kempinski. Kigo, if I told you today I'm going to give you a 1 week holiday, okay, let's go to Mombasa. Pick a hotel that you wish you could go to. Pick any.
Yani, White Sands.
Okay, let's say if I said, oh, okay, I'm giving you a complimentary to White Sands with your family or friends for a week. How you'll make sure you get that time off to go. But if I told you, I'm going to take you to White Sands and you'll stay there for 3 years, you cannot go with a friend or family member, and for the whole 3 years you stay in White Sands. Nobody will sign up for that. So why do we want children to grow up in institutions? So that's why we really work hard to ensure we place children legally in families. Number one, first through any link with their biological families. If that fails, then we'll go through the steps of foster care or adoption. Now, there's a difference. A lot of people will ask, what is foster care? What is adoption? Foster care is an annual commitment that you will stay with this child for a year, and then after a year you will sign up again. But again, there are many loose ends to that. It's still something Kenya is working hard at. It's the big thing on the table for the children's department. But adoption is really enshrined in our law, and it's a permanent solution for the child, like Anne expounded earlier. So after a year, if I've adopted a child and I don't want them after a year, you can now take them back. It's like your biological child. If the biological parents died, that child cannot be disinherited. You know, there are many people who may come after the death of a parent and say, you know, you don't belong to us, you're an outsider, which unfortunately has happened to many. So we really work to legally place children in families, and we trace them. There was a question about, can children who are not minors be adopted? The legal age, the end point, once you're 18, you are an adult, so you can't be adopted once you hit 18, but anybody below 18 can be adopted. Okay. And then there's one other thing maybe I can chime in when we talk about how long will the process take. I've met people who say, oh, this is such a tedious process. It took me 4 years. Then you ask them, okay, tell me what happened. And some people will go to an adoption agency, get the paperwork, then sit on the paperwork. But in their mind, they've started the process. Then they'll sit on that paperwork. They may be asked for another document, they'll sit on it. And maybe just that process takes them over a year. But they're counting that they've started the process. And then when they come to the home, maybe they may dilly-dally again. Oh, I don't have leave. I've just changed jobs. I'm not ready to be placed. They're counting that. But I've met people who started the paperwork today. Within even 2 weeks, you can actually get the adoption agency all that they require if you really work at it. Even a week, I think. You can get your medicals done. You can get the chief's letter, your pastors, whatever. You can do it if you really work at it. And once a case committee has cleared you and you've been placed with a child, remember, part of that 1 year, you actually have the baby in your home. Once you've moved, come to new life, we've placed you with the child, the baby is in your house. So you're bonding with them. The legal process, the baby is with you. So even if the court's closed and it's taking longer, you still have the baby. Of course, many parents are anxious. They want to finalize the process. But the beauty of the process is you will have the baby with you even as you continue that whole process. So again, this is a human life. You can't buy a car tomorrow. I can't decide I want a car and just walk into any showroom and I don't know the specs and I just buy it, okay? Even a shamba, you don't just say, I want to buy a shamba and you do it, you know, in 1 day. You want to check, you can't walk into a bank and ask for a loan. Maybe some, if you are known, maybe people who are known can, but there's a process. Now, this is a human life. So even if the process takes a year, I think as Kenyans, we should really be grateful that there's proper procedure, there's structure to ensure that things are being done well for the good of our children. They can't speak for themselves. They can't defend themselves. So we must allow the process and just work within it. Again, if it was a pregnancy, even in pregnancy, there are things that happen that you cannot anticipate. And you can't start telling the doctor, I expected this pregnancy to go normally, I can't do bed rest. I mean, you work with it until you get your baby.
Yeah.
When it comes to cost, again, people keep saying, oh, adoption is expensive. I mean, you don't have a guarantee when you conceive that it's just going to be smooth. You may have complications and you have to have medication. You may think it's a normal, it goes to a C. I mean, by the time you end, at the end of the day, what is the goal? To have a baby legally in your home. So let's follow the process. In fact, I wish the Kenyans would more be asking, can we tighten it here? Can we ensure this has been done? But a lot of people actually be more flex and loose. Oh, I know Janet, so you go to New Life because Janet is there. Things will, in fact, for my friends, I tell them, wow, kwanza for you. It will be even, and we make sure it is, we follow every loop. Because one day I may stand in court.
We have 21 questions pending. I just want to ask, did we say the minimum age for a child that a child could be adopted? Is there a minimum age?
18. Once they hit 18, they can't be adopted. They're an adult.
Like, what's the youngest that a child can be? How many months?
6 weeks. The child was been given up for adoption. 6 weeks, yes.
Wonderful. All right. So
it can be placed after 3 months, eh? Grace, clarify that, the mother offer.
Oh, yes. After, sorry?
Clarify the timing for the mother offered child. It may not be 6 weeks to go home with a baby.
Yeah. Of course, due to the due process and things like that, at the youngest to be placed to be 3 months. That should be like the youngest.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. There's a question on pre-selection. Mbugua, if I can talk about that a little bit. Pre-selection is against the law. It's not advised. It's not dignifying to the child, as in it's a negative aspect on adoption. I can give an example of you pre-select, you book a child, and then you come to us and say, we want to adopt baby X. And then you go and sit on your documents for a year, like Janet had said. This baby is still in the institution waiting for you to take your time and come and, So it's very unfair to pre-select. It's actually against the law. So no, you cannot pre-select. You come to us, we match you with the child. And if you're lucky and the child that you had seen is the same child that you'll be matched with, then, you know, God is working in your favor. But we can say that we will work with, with your pre-selection.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just very quickly read the comments on the chat and then come back to the question. So Mariam Adams says, fantastic to see so many powerful women. Hongera, you can't buy a child. We love children. So that's why people adopt, to give better life and spread the love, even in Islam. It is to help and give a child home and love and give good life to a child, and many good reasons. I will love to share a good story of adoption. I supervise and it's going well, even if some bumper on the road. So just for everyone who, Mariam is in Toronto. So in Canada, when a citizen adopts a child under 18 years of age, an adoption must meet the following requirements in order for the child to be granted citizenship of Canada. So at least all of you guys to know it's important. One of the adoption must be in the best interest of the child. The adoption will create a genuine relationship of parent and child. The adoption is in accordance with the laws of the place where the adoption took place, and the laws of the country of adoption must not have been entered into for primarily or for the purpose of acquiring status or privilege in relation. So it is similar as Kenya law. It is always good to know all this information. Thank you, Marion. And then Lynette, yes, I think the question on minority of minors and majority age, that was answered. And then Mariam says, any questions? If anyone need more information, I am here to help too. All right, so thank you for your contributions, Mariam. And then I'll just very quickly come to the questions. So someone asks, what do you recommend is the best? So I'll read all of them, and then we can, and then so our three panelists we can be able to take the question that speaks to what they were speaking to and their particular area. And then so someone asked, hi, could you kindly explain on the special circumstances that enable a person over 65 years to adopt a child? And then we have Kongere saying, this is Leon from University of Nairobi School of Law, Mombasa. What's the nature of the 3 months placement arrangement before issuance of the adoption order? Like, is a child just sent to a stranger, the adopting parent's house? And then Happy asks, do you know when the law around adoption for non-Kenyans will be finalized? So that one specifically for Anne. And then there's a question, is there any precedent for someone starting the adoption process as a Kenyan child, and then the parents' nationality changes, so they are no longer Kenyan by choice? Interesting question. Happy says, thank you for organizing this session. Thank you. Then Catherine asks, can one appoint 2 guardians for the child? That is non-couples or non-related guardians? That's an interesting question. Mariam says, I want to learn, can someone adopt children in Kenya? And how long is the process take? And we have people who help and adopt children through World Vision. An excellent present. Okay, many of my questions, so your questions already answered. Thank you, Mariam. Then someone says, thank you for this forum. The issue, a question for Grace. I had started the adoption process with Little Angels, but was advised the license was still under renewal. Is that now resolved, and can I resume the process? So that's specifically for Grace. Obare asks, can we get a comment when it comes to spiritual beliefs? How do you ensure the adopting parents and the child are in sync? What of atheists? That's a very interesting question. Probably for children older, probably older than 2 or 3. Then Huwaida asks, in making specifications from a prospective parent, can a request be made for a child of certain physical features so as to be able to fit in better with the overall family? For example, I live in Nairobi, but my family is of mixed tribe. I've been advised to adopt from Mombasa so that the child can physically fit in better with my biological child and extended family. Should I then have to contact an adoption agency or children's home in the coast, or can I start the process in Nairobi? That's an interesting question. I actually wondered about it, like in the process, and so maybe this would be for Janet and Grace, about, do you look at, like, maybe this family comes from this part of the country, maybe to use ethnic stereotype, maybe it's Kalenjins, and we're celebrating melanin. So is it like skin color, skin tone, features. Is that something that you look at? So that would be interesting. And then there's a question on guardianship. Could you comment on guardianship? I have raised my brother's children for over 10 years. Is there any legal relief? I can't get them benefits such as medical cover and have to pay separately. So that's an interesting question, and it's for Anne. And then I don't know if it's the same person, but what is the role of a legal guardian during the adoption process? Okay, so it's separate, and that's again for Anne. And then Diora says, thank you, ladies, for the informative webinar. As a prospective adopter, that's a single woman, I would like to be best prepared before starting the process. Therefore, what are the financial implications of the adoption process, such as agency fees, legal fees? I think that had been mentioned as 12,500 in terms of, and that's sort of like the government fees, and then the legal fees, it could be from as far as pro bono to as far as the type of the law firm that you take up. And then Carol again asks, at what point does the role of a legal guardian cease to exist or be relevant? And then I think this question had been asked before about what would you recommend is the best way, time and way for disclosure to the child in terms of letting them know that they're adopted. Maybe that would be for Grace. And then the question, is the period for adoption the same during the pandemic, or does it take a longer period? And that one, I think Janet had mentioned that it does take slightly longer right now. And then again, question on the cost, how much does it cost on average to do a kinship adoption in Kenya? Or maybe that one, so maybe this might, I don't know if this is different, if a kinship adoption, which is probably the family adopting maybe someone within the family still, I don't know if it would be different, so that would be on Anne as well. And then Catherine says, thanks to the panelists, should one engage a lawyer at the beginning of the process or after the 3 months fostering process? So that's a question for Anne. And then Bilha says, my sister passed away and left a son who she was taking care of. I would like to adopt him to support him financially. He's 5 years and living with my mom. How's the best way to go about it? Oh yes, so now I see that, I guess that's what you meant in the question about kinship adoption. So that, so yes, so our panelists have taken note of that. And then the last question is, when is the right age to tell the child that he or she is adopted? And so that goes again with the question of the right way and the right age, which we can give to Grace. So thank you so much. We have about 8 minutes, so it's gonna be a bit of a quick fire in terms of the responses, and some of them have been, some of the questions have been repeated. So we could actually just start with Janet. So maybe just 3 minutes to, actually 2 minutes.
All right.
Try to respond to each.
Yeah. All right. When to tell a child, I think that should be an incremental. Begin with little stories when they're younger. A lot of people freeze and want to tell the children when they're older. It actually can backfire on you. So start with little stories, let them know about it. For anybody who wants to know a little bit more about this, we actually will be having a live Facebook session on our New Life homepage this Thursday. We have a couple who has adopted 3 children, and they'll be sharing their story of how they've done it, and their kids are grown up. They love the fact that they were adopted, and it's not a fight. How do we match the children? If you don't need to go to Mombasa to get a light-skinned child. One of the things the adoption agency will ask you for is your family picture. And again, we'll look at that, because you may have a child who's of a mixed race maybe, or a child who's somehow. And then again, remember, it's a God thing. A lot of couples who've lived together for long, people say you begin to look alike. 90%, if you meet people who've adopted, you won't know. Somehow God just allows that they begin to look alike. But we use your pictures and work as best to see how we can do that. Somebody else has said their sister passed away and they have a 5-year-old nephew they want to take care of. Again, please get a lawyer. The process is the same as kinship adoption. And I think Grace will also be touching on that. And then when it comes to the fees, please remember, money should only change hands at 2 places, with the adoption agency and with your lawyer. Not with the children's home, not with a government person, nothing, just the adoption agency and the lawyer.
Thank you. Grace?
Yes, the license, the client, our client who already started the process with us, I'll kindly ask you to just be a little bit patient. We're still following up with the government on the license renewal. We're really hoping that you're gonna get it as soon as possible. So yeah, look forward to that great news soon. On guardianship, rather the legal guardian, the job of a legal guardian, I think I'm overstepping, but the job of a legal guardian is, in case anything happens to you as the prospective adoptive parent, then the legal guardian will step in. So yes, you can get any legal guardian as long as you know this person will do a good job in taking care of your child in case, God forbid, anything happens to you as the parent. Kinship, adoption, the cost is the same. Really, it's an adoption process, so we will treat it as such. You will just not go to the only difference with this adoption is that you don't go to the institution to bond with the child. You will, you know, as soon as you've been declared, I mean, the child has been declared free and you've been approved, you go straight to the legal aspect of the adoption process. Yes.
And could you, thank you for that. And also, would you be able to comment on the issue of spiritual beliefs? Like, how do you ensure the adopting parents and the child are in sync? Like, what's the procedure? Like, what if it's a Muslim family or a Hindu family, and maybe the children's home might be a Christian children's home, and then also what about atheists? How does that come into the picture? Or is it not? Is it an issue that comes up, or it's non-issue?
I think it's a non-issue. Usually, the way you bring up your child is the way you bring up your child, and if the child is young, they can figure it out as you go. Yeah,
they'll fit into the family.
Exactly, unless Janet has anything else to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be discriminatory for us to say we can't place a child with somebody of a different faith. True. Because when the paperwork comes in, once they're vetted, we just have to place the children and trust the Lord with the process where the children will be.
All right, thank you. So now we can, Anne can come in, and there was a lot of questions for her.
Yes.
Very
I think the biggest question on my side is, when will the moratorium end? This is a question I've been asked by clients many times. And honestly speaking, I don't know who has the answer to that question in Kenya. It could end the moment cabinet decides to end it. It could end if there is a court order and there is compliance from the side of the executive. It could, I mean, we don't know. One would have to go to the root of the moratorium. Why did we place a moratorium? Maybe it will end if that fear, real or imagined, whatever the case may have been, if that issue is addressed. I would imagine Kenyan being a very political country, state, there are many politics around the moratorium. Those who are players in the industry are well informed. So I do not have the answer to that question. I actually do not know. But those two things could resolve it. Either cabinet withdraws it or an order is issued, which is now followed at the level of cabinet. Now, can one appoint more legal guardians? The law is okay with one, but remember you can appoint guardians even at the level of the will, in your will, because this may be tied to succession. You can appoint at the will level, but the law is okay and satisfied with one legal guardian. You can appoint more if you want at the level of the will. How can we guardianship? People struggle between all these orders relating to children. Foster, guardianship, custody. Foster was explained. It's a yearly right to keep that particular child. It does not confer full parental responsibility, even especially at the level of, let's say, travel outside jurisdiction. And it doesn't demand that you cater for that child in terms of inheritance, etc. I know there are many questions raised around foster care in relation to adoption. Does it amount to pre-selection? Because I'm already having the child. And of course, what if that child was placed in the hands of someone who cannot adopt in the light of the moratorium, like a foreigner? Thorny issues we are dealing with in court. I think it's time to seriously look at foster care in vis-a-vis the best interests of the children. Guardianship is higher than foster care. It actually confers, according to the books, it confers even rights to travel outside jurisdiction with our child, as per the books. But I know in practice, we still have to go to court to seek orders to travel with the children. There is someone who has that order and would want to help some relatives. I know many employers will not take it for, in terms of benefits, employment benefits. Maybe it's time to upgrade to adoption. Though guardianship per se confers parental responsibility, but it's always better to go for the full one, which is the adoption. I don't know whether there was any other. When to engage a lawyer, the earlier you engage the lawyer, the better, so that you do not wander in the wilderness like the children of Israel. I have found some Kenyans who have been to other people, they wandered, they went to the wrong courts, So it's good to engage a lawyer early enough, then they can guide you on the path. They will not start the process, it's not yet. They will still refer you to the adoption societies. But it's good to go there knowing what to expect. Sister and someone who has a sister who passed on, she's been taking care of the son. Good thing, may God bless you for that. But if you're to confer full benefits, still we would advocate for adoption. Why am I saying this? Is because of Succession Act. When you look at family matters, you have to do a holistic look. In our Succession Act, and I hope I have not gone beyond the hour, there are people we call children brought in by the deceased who are entitled to inherit. And there has been a big question of how do you bring them in, It came from, by the way, the African adoption. The African adoption was just bringing in. You bring in relatives and they are yours. And if you look at our law, they've been taking care of that. However, now time is ripe. If you want someone to have full benefits and you want to take full responsibility over that person, you better do adoption. And I cannot close this before I say, even those people who marry a person who has children, for them to be taken truly as your children, you need to go through adoptions. So if I have a child and I meet Mr. Right and we get married, he acquires the role of stepfather. Under the Children's Act, he has parental responsibility. But a debate will come. Is this child an heir of Mr. Right? Those are the ones who are shoved out, it is always good to remove these gray areas. Better still to do an adoption. 65 years old, now 65, the energies of taking care of a child is very low. This is where grandparents just take care of a child one afternoon and they quickly call the parents because energies have drained. So the law is not very happy with I'm heading there, very old people coming to adopt children, and it's all about the best interest of the child. But there are exceptions. I guess it's where there is kinship, like it's grandmother, grandfather, and they have these children who've been abandoned by their own children. maybe that could amount to exceptional circumstances. But having handled one, I know the court is more stringent. You have to put security. I will know one where we put a title, because I don't know, there's always an assumption that when you're old, the Lord would call you home early before. It's like there's a roll call based on age. So just in case the Lord comes for you very soon, there's need to secure the provision of this child. But I think even energy-wise, hatuna nguvu nyingi at 65. Yeah. I think that's the best we can do within your time, Kingwa.
Yes, you've
Unless
done a great
a
job.
Question hanging.
You've actually answered everything. So maybe just these three last questions, which I'll just very quickly read out, and you can mention them as you give your closing remarks. And also, I also want to extend an opportunity to all the participants to really come on board and engage with what Pastor Janet and Grace are doing in terms of giving support, in terms of just really, just getting engaged, finding out what are the needs. So we'll also, as a part of the closing remarks, we'll give Dr. Janet an opportunity to talk about what are the needs that they have and how can a well-wisher give support. So just the last, I think we might have touched on them, but I'll just read them out. So Leon had talked about the nature of the 3 months placement arrangement before issuance of the adoption order. And he asked, like, is a child just sent to a stranger, the adopting parent's house? And then there's a question of, is there any precedent for someone starting the adoption process as a Kenyan child, and then the parent's nationality changes, so they're no longer Kenyan by choice? And then I don't know if it's the same person, but I would like to follow up on the kinship question. If the child is in Kenya and I am in another country. And then Catherine asked, could you please give us Anne's contacts? Certainly, we shall be putting them, the contacts of the law firm on the in the chat. So we could just ending with that. So maybe starting with Grace, and then Janet, and then Anne. So we'll probably just be close. Yeah, in the next 2 minutes we should be done. In the meantime, I'll be sharing the contacts.
If you're adopting and then you change your nationality, I think you'll have to finish the adoption process first and then go ahead and deal with the nationality. I think so. I think that's the only way you can do it, because I don't think you can travel with a child. I know you cannot travel the child out of the jurisdiction of Kenya if you do not have the legal documents to prove that this is your child legally. So yes, that will be my stand on that. The other ones might be inclined to the legal aspect. Kima, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for you, it's just actually just your final, what kind of support do you need, or maybe that, what recommendations would you give to about the whole process in terms of moving forward to just make it more clearer and to avoid these kind of situations of child trafficking? And it could be, the recommendations could be policy recommendations, legal recommendations, and that kind of thing.
Okay, adoption is a very beautiful, noble thing that you can do to give a child a home that is caring and loving and a safe space for the child to grow in. So everyone needs to look into adopting, and it's a very dignified way of doing things compared to trafficking, like and buying of children, like the BBC expose that was shared with all of us. It's a very unfortunate way of doing things. Let's go the legal way, adopt, dignify this child's life, and you'll even be proud to tell the child later in life that you follow the due process and this is how far you've gone with it. How you can support us, we have our details on our Instagram page. Kindly follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Our Facebook page is Little Angels Network. Our Instagram page is Little Angels Network. There we have details of how you can partner with us and get involved in the work that we do. Donate through our M-Pesa pay bill number that will go directly to our accounts. and yeah, partner with us in kind and volunteer with us, etc. The information is on our socials.
Santi Sana, thank you. I'll also be sharing a link. So, and then, so what about Pastor Janet?
All right, there's somebody who's asked twice about the 3-month period. Again, yes, it may seem like the parents are strangers, but please remember what we said. These people have been vetted. They come to the children's home. Everything has been done. We have all their paperwork. Then they go through a bonding time. So we vet them also as a children's home. So the 3 months are just a legal provision for you to have that temporary foster care with the child before you start your legal paperwork, all right? So it's part of the legal process. In terms of New Life, we have a lot of information in our Facebook page. This is National Adoptions Month. So we've had different people come on and we have some recordings there. Please go there. You'll find some of the recordings we had with the adoption agencies. Some lawyers came on. And we even had an adult who was adopted. She's now an adult and also an adoptive parent. So listening to her story as an adoptee and also an adoptive parent, it brings a lot of perspective. And those of you who've adopted and want to know how to tell your children that they're adopted, please join us this Thursday at 7:30. If you're not able to, come onto our Facebook page later for the recording. Again, you can support us. We are supported by well-wishers. It's a work of faith. It's a very expensive work. Formula alone, one little baby takes formula 3 days, that's 1,000 bob. But we must ensure they get what they need. So again, go to our Facebook page, go to our Instagram, and we have a lot that we have there that will direct you on how best you can support us.
Thank you very much. And so the final from Anne.
Yes.
So there were 2 last questions that were raised, and then also you could give just your closing remarks to this topic moving forward.
All right, there's someone or a couple that could change nationality midway. The good thing is that our law now allows for dual citizenship. So I don't think that should necessarily prejudice the process, especially, I don't know how far you've gone, but one could look at that aspect of the dual citizenship. I think it's what is material is at the point of start. And I see there's a lot of emphasis of being in Kenya. Very important as far as adoption is concerned. The child is in Kenya. I am abroad. You have to come to Kenya, and these 3 months are absolutely important, not just mandatory. You know, there are some things which are not mandatory and you wonder what's their value. But the 3 months are very important. Test yourself, test your relationship. It passes, you come to court. As far as international adoptions are concerned, I would want to say there are a lot of fears, but there are many good stories. In fact, success stories we have. Maybe, and this is not just on international, it's on all adoption. Maybe we need to deliberately promote adoptions, but in doing so, we need to address the myths, the stigmas, the fears, and the fear is mainly in international adoption. The stigma and myths are with us. These are our own. And the earlier we have this kind of discussions, the earlier people came out and proudly stated, this is my adopting daughter, parent, I was adopted. People declare it because it is a blessing, it's a good thing. As far as international adoptions are concerned, I think we need more stringent measures. And I know we had stringent ones, now we need to make them maybe more stringent. Then we need some follow-up abroad, because the fear is always our children will be taken away, they'll be abused abroad, they will be what if. But being in a global village, is there anything we can do where there are reports that consistently come and we have a way of following it up? That is my thinking. I know the internationals used to even adopt taboo children, which I'm sure my colleagues would say Kenyans don't adopt. So this has affected some children who otherwise would be in happy homes, but because of the moratorium, they are not able to enjoy the benefit. Finally, children are a blessing from the Lord. They always are. There is someone crying out for that child. I'm speaking now to the people who feel children are a burden, we need to abort them. We don't need to abort children because there's someone somewhere crying out, and there are many here crying out for that child, to love that child and give that child a chance. Just carry the pregnancy and surrender the child to that loving parent so that that child will have a chance. So let's promote each other. Let us promote the ones doing very good work like child welfare, like Little Angels Network. Let's promote New Life Home and other homes. Let us capture them in our CSR programs that are, especially now Christmas is coming. Let's remember them during this COVID period. Let's share love, and sharing it with the children bring exemplary joy because they do not have other places to go to. Thank you very much, Kingwa. I really enjoy. We've done adoptions for the last 20-something years. It's our pet subject. It's the beautiful side of family law because the others are fighting. At least this side of family law, people are just hugging each other and kissing each other. This is a love side of family. It is the brightest side in my family practice. Even in court, it happens on Thursday. That's when you find people talking to each other. The other days, people don't talk to each other because it's divorce, it is succession case, it's a custody fight. This is the beautiful side of the family. So let us all promote it. And I'm sure, and I really want to thank our courts. They've been very supportive. Let the message of good love and goodness and sharing go to the churches, go to other areas. Let us freely walk into adoption places. You can foster, to children's homes, you can foster, you can have guardianship, you can have adoption, whichever, wherever you lie. And if you can't do all that, you can take a check to support that one child who is disadvantaged. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you, our panelists. First of all, Dr. Janet and Grace, for the amazing work that you are doing. Your Shujaz, Mashujaa Day was last month, but you are still Shujaz, and just keep on. And I hope even after this, that personally, that we will be in touch, and just, especially Dr. Janet, to just really try to figure out what more we can do to add to your efforts. Thank you, Anne, for just being as amazing and outstanding with your advice, and very quick, very, very sharp, I like your incisive mind, you see very clear how people can solve their problems. So thank you for that. And then also our participants, we've gone almost 20 minutes past time, but you're almost 90% of you are still all here. More than 41 of you are still all here. So thank you for that. And thank you for really being engaged and coming on board and asking these questions. It means that you have really been thinking about the adoption process. And we are very happy about that, very proud of you, because for me, I usually look at the Kenyan place, and it's a Kenyan family. So that's the kind of mindset that we need to carry on in everything that we do. Yeah, and so just in our small way, in this small webinar, this is our little way of trying to change the world, making the world a better place. And I believe that it's possible. So thank you, everyone, and go out and have an amazing weekend, and let's keep on praying and just really doing all this kind of work. So thank you all. Thank you. So I'm very honored by today. Thank you so much. So I will end this now, and the recording will be shared on YouTube and also on the Musyimi page and also on the Black Star page. And remember, also on Thursday, Dr. Janet has an event, so you all must tune into that. All right, you have a good weekend now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.